Hi, welcome to Montana State of Mind with me, Montana, a channel where we mostly recap old vintage romance novels, if you will, some horror, and we are looking for sci-fi, medieval fantasy, just any paperback novel from prior to the 1990s, ye old 1990s and up. We are now, I guess, in podcast form. I am on Spotify. I'm on Apple, I think. I think pretty much anywhere you can get your podcasts. Now, January, I'm late a little bit because January, I think everybody can agree, wow, what a month. Wow, what a month. Outside of the world, just personally, like y'all had my cow thing that happened earlier in January. My snake got injured. Evangeline, she got injured. She's okay, but it was not fun. Last week, I caught the flu along with all of my kids, but then my flu wouldn't fuck off and it developed into bronchitis. I was going to record, like, 'cause, you know, like y'all aren't going to catch my flu through the channel, but at the same time, I sounded like Maya Angelou, and I just thought there are other ways for a white person to contribute to Black History Month. I'm so traumatized from that flu, from that bronchitis. I've been wearing, like, mask up, y'all. I don't care your political affiliation, your religious, I don't give a shit. Those masks keep your cooties off of people and vice versa. And vice versa, okay? You're not making a political statement. You're not making a religious statement. Just wear your mask so everybody's not sneezing on everybody. January was the longest month ever, personally, and I think historically. But it is Black History Month. We're going to be bigger and blacker than ever. All right? Says the white girl. But hey, I wouldn't be an ally if I didn't do what I could with my privilege. I could say so much. Like, I want to sometimes. Like, I could say so much about the goings on of the world right now. But I think as a white person on Black History Month, it is my duty to shut the fuck up for at least a month. At least a month. Hey, white people, let's take a step back and not say what we think for like a month. I think that's our biggest contribution. Y'all know what I mean, though. I do have my opinions. I'm a Gemini, but like I said, I'm trying to reserve that spot, that place for actual Black voices this month. And so what I'm going to do is we are covering a Black romance author. She is not even just like the best of the Black authors, but she's one of the best romance authors there are, and that is Beverly Jenkins. Now, I've been wanting to cover one of her books because she is so famous in the community, but I have these books kind of stacked out for like the next 6 months because it's very easy to just go to a store and just buy a shit ton of books. And I definitely wanted to do her for Black History Month, but I don't think, my biggest fear is people are going to be like, she'll only cover Black authors on February. That's not the case. That's not the case. We will cover others on others months, but let us have our first Black author on February, okay? I am fumbling through this, and I probably sound like such an asshat, but whatever. Also, can y'all see this little shock of gray, those who are watching this? Like, I'm growing my roots out because I just haven't seen my natural hair color since I was 16. But, like, look at this little shock of gray. That's so cute. So, on this channel, for those who are new, hi, hello, welcome. On this channel, we cover the cover art because romance novels are iconic in their most beautiful. These covers are absolutely amazing. A work of art themselves. We could literally just talk about the artwork. Then we do a fictional, made up author lore because I like personally looking at these author pictures and just coming up with what I think they're like. It's completely fabricated. I have to say that so many times so none of these authors sue me. So real quick, I saved my opinions for the end of the video, but off the top of my head, this book I really enjoyed. Love this couple. I love the research Beverly Jenkins did. This takes place during like the Underground Railroad right before the Civil War. She has a ton of historical information and facts that I am going to tell you about. Okay? Because this is educational. I would put her on par with Penelope Neary of like heavily researched. You are going to learn while you're enjoying this romance novel. Wonderful sex scenes. I was wondering, so I'm going to make a Patreon for $3, which is pretty much how much these books cost like in the 80s and 90s. Because it was one of those things of like, okay, like $1 not enough. That's not even like, you're going to take the taxes out of that. And then $5, I was like, well, that's $5 is a lot of pressure. Like, I feel like I got to do something for $5. $3 though, $3 on a Patreon. I thought we could cover some of the sex scenes if I deem them like steamy enough, because I don't on this YouTube channel because YouTube will get mad at me and take away advertising. But I thought on Patreon we could cover that. I could cover maybe some movies that I know y'all wanted me to cover, like Blair Witch Project and my least favorite movie in the world, Twister. If y'all just want to hear me bitch about Twister and the stupidness of that movie. Holstein cows are not in Oklahoma. That cow needs to be black. BBC in the Oklahoma territory. Big black cattle, okay? Anyways, so if y'all want to hear that, maybe we'll do that. I could also recap like other book, like modern books that I'm reading. I read a wide variety of books. I should tell y'all what happens in some of these Danmei novels I'm reading, the Chinese gay romance novels. I've got one called The Disabled Tyrant's Beloved Pet Fish. Y'all, let me break that down, that title real quick. The Disabled Tyrant's Beloved Pet Fish. That's the romance. Like, I could cover that if y'all are interested in that. I don't know. Let me know in the comments so I can kind of get a feel of what I can do for $3 a month that y'all feel would be a fair trade-off. Anyways, back to this novel. This novel is a lot calmer than the other novels we've read. Now, the other novels we have read, sorry if my voice is kind of off again, coming off bronchitis, but the other novels, like, it's so much happens. Like, what was it in the last book? Like, there was 2 volcanoes exploding, a sea monster, and they had to get in the ship, and they were both trying to kill each other. Like, it was so much happening. There is drama. There is stuff happening, but it's given kind of more of like Downton Abbey level, where it's calm chaos. Like, shit's happening, but it's a little bit calm, and you can like drink tea and follow it along and just be like, wow, that's crazy. Now, this cover, okay. I don't have the pretty cover. I ordered this off eBay and they gave me this cover. This like school edition, you know, where it's just, if you're listening, it's literally just a black book with like indigo jewels and like pearls around it. It's cute, but like it's definitely like this is what your school would have. Now the actual cover, if I can remember it, okay, so let me try to recall it. They are in it's nighttime, pink rose garden. So it's nighttime with hues in the background of like black trees and like dark navy blues, you know, the night. And then we have these beautiful hot pink, bubblegum pink, if you will, roses all along the edge of the, like the bottom of the book cover. Now this is going to be Hester. And Hester is wearing, of course, an indigo blue dress. It's very 1980s, like the shoulders and the cut, you know, very 80s. Definitely not the 1800s when this takes place. But I think the pink roses and the indigo dress, and then her, and the man's name is Galen. I think her and Galen's skin color, I think these all are very great artistic choices. But I think it goes so, like, I think this cover really pops. Esther has her one arm behind her head, arching up, a small smile on her face because she's a lady, okay? So a small smile on her face. And again, I am so glad to see, is a deeper skin-toned black woman, because a lot of the times I feel like when they have a person of color on these novels, they lean a little more white, a little more whitewashed. And so I was curious how Beverly Jenkins covers, because I mean, let's be honest, this is like, she's one, not the first and definitely not the only one, but she's one of the most prominent like Black authors to break into this genre. So for her covers to translate actual Black people instead of like we've seen before where they kind of whitewash them. Beautiful Black woman. Her hair is relaxed, not natural hair. It is relaxed. That's fine. That's her choice. I think it looks great. And then behind her, we have Galen. Now, Galen in the novel is Creole, you know, like he's a little mixed. But on the cover, again, another actual Black man. They didn't lean more towards the whiteness in him. Definitely leaned in the Blackness, which I appreciated, because again, they're always gonna on these covers go towards the whiteness, even though like our first novel was a North African man and they were like, make him look like Prince Eric from Little Mermaid. Galen, I don't remember, does he have a mustache? Is there a mustache on this cover? He's got typical, it looks very 90s 80s, like close cropped, like that hairstyle like all the guys had. And he's wearing black pants and he's shirtless. And he's behind Hester. Like, she's got her arm behind her head and she's arching her back. We know why. And he's behind her, I guess, causing that arch, if you will. But I do think this cover is one of my favorites, knowing these characters. Fictional author lore, completely made up. This is not true. This is me looking at a photo of somebody just talking out my ass, okay? So Miss Beverly. Let's look at this picture. I immediately want her to be my history teacher because I have always said every history class should be taught by a Black woman. I stand by that. Put it on a tote bag. If I'm to have merch, let that be one of the things that's on the merch. Is I think every history class should be taught by a Black woman, because that's the only way we're ever going to learn like actual history from like the best, like the most best perspective. That's not a way to phrase that. From the best perspective, I think would be a Black woman, because who has history been the hardest on? Black women. And so I think she looks like she would teach the hell out of a history class, especially in the South. I know she would grab up some of them little white boys on the football team and she would make them come after school for extra lessons. Like, that sounds sexual, but you know what I mean? Of like, I don't think this is retaining in y'all's little heads. I'm gonna need y'all to come after school so we can have tutoring so you can fully understand what we're learning and not what your daddy and your uncle talk about at the dinner table. Okay? Because let's be honest, every fucking history class in the South, I don't know how it is anywhere else, is taught by a football coach. Most often a white football coach. Probably why America votes the way it does. So she's teaching the history class. She probably smells great. I don't know if that's like a racist thing of me thinking like every Black lady smells nice, but it's true. I've never met a Black woman that didn't smell fucking amazing. So I think she smells nice. I think she probably hasn't updated her TV since the 90s. I still think she's got like a TV with like a VHS and a DVD player at the bottom of it. And we're just like, Miss Beverly, do you like, you can go to Walmart and go get like a TV. And she's like, no, that one's fine. Why would I, like, what? I don't need all that stuff. And then if I want to watch Eve's Bayou on VHS, I can. I do think she is a Kohl's Cash member. I think she definitely is fluent in the currency of Kohl's Cash, like my mom. I bet she really likes Matlock. She looks like she loves criminal justice TV. Like a Matlock or, I bet she loves Divorce Court. I bet at lunch, she sits in the teacher's lounge and she gets out her little salad and she watches the Divorce Court. Now at the cookout, we have our little author cookout where everybody's like bringing a drink and a snack. She is absolutely not eating a damn thing that's not packaged. Much like, who was it? We had another author that gave off that vibe of they are just very much the type of women and men who are just like, if I don't see it coming out of a closed plastic container from the store or a caterer, it's not going in my mouth, because we can't trust what people are cooking in their kitchens. Okay. We can't trust it. I've seen so many cats on counters. We can't trust it, which I don't understand because I have a cat, and if she's right behind me. If you ever jump on that counter, you will be thrown outside from your hind feet. But yeah, too many cats on the counters. And she knows for sure that, well, what's her face that we said probably had a parrot. She's like, absolutely not eating out of hers. She probably lets the parrot all over the kitchen. So Beverly's just like, no, we're not. We will have a packaged cookie from the Chick-fil-A catering cart, and we will say hi and probably leave. She gives big introvert energy. But I say that also, her and Miss Janelle probably gets along with everybody. I don't know why I always just like go back to her because she just looks like such a friendly woman. But she can probably get Miss Beverly, going. She can probably get her going at the poker table. Like, come on, Miss Beverly, come sit with us. Get over here, girl. You are not about to leave. You just showed up. Now get over here. And Beverly's like, oh my God. Okay. I'll play one round. We'll play one round of Mahjong, like one round. And then she's like, well, let me mix you a drink. Do you want one of these wine coolers? And Miss Beverly's like, girl, I can't, I cannot be having that much sugar this early. No. And so she'll have, what will she drink? I bet she likes some Mike's Hard Lemonade. I bet she does. I bet she likes some Mike's Hard Lemonade. Something easy, simple, doesn't taste like ass. So she'll crack open her little Mike's Hard Lemonade probably. Or like something like that. Like, I don't know the nowadays equivalent. Like, what do they got now? I don't even know. Hell, she might open a White Claw. I don't fucking know. She's a simple woman, okay? She's not here to get slammed. But she can't handle the sugar content in those goddamn wine coolers that Miss Janelle brought. Who can? She also probably really loves the OJs. I bet she goes and sees the OJs when they're in town. I would. I fucking love the OJs. So me and Miss Beverly, we will both be going to the OJs concert. However many are still alive. All right. We're going to get into it. I'm opening my notes. My notes, if January wasn't hard enough, these notes are written in probably 5 different pen colors because my pens kept running out of ink. They were trying to silence me, y'all. Oh, y'all want to hear something real quick? Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Go ahead and skip to the beginning if you do not care. Okay, real fast. I'm in the doll community. I'm a doll collector. I fucking love dolls. Maybe that'll be a Patreon. Is me talking about dolls. Anyways, so the American Girl dolls, like the history American Girl dolls. There is the first black one. I know there's like Melody and stuff right now, which she's super cute. But the first one was Addie. Addie or Abby? I think it was Addie. Anyways, and she was like Civil War era girl, super cute. Loved her. She has like a really cute Christmas Kwanzaa outfit, by the way. I want to get it. I want to get her and I want to get her Kwanzaa outfit because it's so cute. Anyways, on Instagram, if you type in, and it might have changed, but last week and the week before, because like some of us in the doll community were experimenting with it. If you go to the search bar and you type Addie, like I forget her last name, if you type her name or like American Girl doll Addie or something like that, absolutely nothing pops up. Not a tagged photo, nothing. That's crazy because there are collectors who specialize in just her and none of their stuff pops up. And so we typed in other American Girl doll names, like Josefina and Samantha, and all of their stuff pops up. Tons of stuff. There's accounts, there's tags, all that stuff. Addie, nothing pops up. And we don't know why. Why? Is it racism? I don't know. But in the doll community, that was quite the like interesting development of like, oh, the one Black history doll no one can find in the search bar if you search her. Interesting. Back to this novel. Sorry. So I have up top here, I began reading this book on Martin Luther King Day and also the second Trump inauguration. And like I wrote the date. Apparently I thought this was going to be, I'll come back to this day and be like, wow, what a time. That is crazy. He was inaugurated on Martin Luther King Day. Like, wow. We couldn't have picked any other day. Without further ado, I've talked enough. Let's actually get into this novel of Indigo by Beverly Jenkins. We begin with a prologue. It is September 7th, 1831. A letter to a Catherine. Her brother has exchanged his freedom to be with the love of his life. So this man in this letter is a free black man, and he has given up his freedom so that he can be with the woman he loves who is still in slavery. He is writing to his sister Catherine that they will send their baby to her. And that leaves off. And then we have a second letter, December 12th, 1833. So 2 years later, the owner that owned the man and the woman and their baby has passed away. His wife and daughter, we learned that they had a daughter. His wife and daughter have been sold off. He himself, the man, has wasting disease, and he will not make it very long. He begs his sister Catherine to find not only his wife, but to please find his daughter and bring her out of slavery. Buy her, do something, steal her, get her out of slavery. He cut the tip of his daughter, who we, of course, will learn is named Hester. He cut the tip of her finger when she was born so that she could always be identified as his daughter. He begs Catherine, as he is dying in his letter, please find Hester. And then we open to chapter 1. Whitaker, Michigan, October 1858. So about 20-ish years later. It is a stormy night in Michigan. A Quaker named Mr. Woods brings a family to now adult Hester. There is a man in drag who has been beaten very badly. In his name, he goes by Black Daniel. We learn that Hester is a conductor in the Underground Railroad, and so she takes in this family, and she takes in this really beat up man, this Black Daniel. Her and her neighbor best friend person named B, they doctor him up as best they can. And it made me laugh because as they're doctoring him up, she says, because the good Lord would not put a mule's face on a man as finely made as that. So essentially his face is beaten to a pulp, but he has a real hot bod. And so B's kind of like, this guy's hot. And Hester's like, you can't tell, his face is caved in. And she's like, again, the good Lord would not put a mule's face on a man as finely made as that. And she's not wrong. So Hester begins changing out of her like dirty clothes after she's been nursing this man. And as she is changing, the man who is beaten up, starts watching her, and it's like being watched by a cyclops because only one eye is poking out of the bandages. And that, I don't care how hot he is, you're in your like little 1800s log cabin house with no electricity, so it's probably lit by like an oil lamp, and you have this grown-ass man who's beaten up just staring at you with like one eye through the bandages as you're changing. That's kind of creepy. Hester finally goes to sleep, but she wakes up to Black Daniel like staring at her, very Samuel Jackson in Black Snake Moan, just staring at her and limping around. And she's like, you need to sit still, you're very injured. But he has the good point of he has to go to the potty, and he does not want to do it in this house. And I liked it because she was like, well, just go pee in that chamber. And he's like, girl, I don't need to pee. And I have here, even hotties have to poop. And he's not Black Daniel. He is the Black Daniel. And here, let's get some like insight as to how they behave, Hester and the Black Daniel, as she is taking care of him. Because it's just them two. Because she does get that other family out and back onto the railroad. But obviously he has to take a little extra time. Many speculated on his whereabouts, while a few publicly stated they didn't believe the Black Daniel actually existed. Hester, of course, knew differently. He existed all right, and she had yet to meet a more sullen or rude individual in all her 24 years. Giving credence to her point, he lit into Hester the moment she entered the room. Where have you been? Having just come from church, Hester was determined not to be provoked by his temper. She set down the tray holding his evening meal and said, I'm pleased you missed my company. I was at church. Today is Sunday. He made a rude noise in reply, and Hester skewered him with a look that dared him to comment further. He didn't, though she doubted his silence had anything to do with him being intimidated by her glare. He didn't impress her as the type that was easily intimidated by anyone. Male, female, black, white. He told her, "I'd appreciate knowing when I'm going to be left here alone." He was right, she knew, so she nodded in agreement. "Folks were talking about you at church today," she related, figuring he should know about the speculating going on. "Why?" "There are some slave catchers in Detroit asking if there's anyone in the area harboring runaways. And does anyone know a man called the Black Daniel?" "And how did your church-going neighbors reply?" "No and no, despite the $500 reward." "That much? That's an awful lot of silver for some Judas." "There are no traitors in this community." "There has to be. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here." "What do you mean?" "The catchers who ambushed me boasted of a snake being in Whittaker's garden." Hester stared in shock. "In Whittaker's garden? You must be mistaken. This part of the road has operated since after the War of Independence. Everyone here is highly trusted." "Which means nothing," he pointed out. Hester goes on to say there is no one in this town that is a snake in the grass. There's no snake in this garden, and the Black Daniel's like, obviously there is, girl, because I was almost murdered. He says, "I take it you don't believe me?" "I believe you may have been betrayed, but the injuries you sustained speak for themselves. But it wasn't done from someone here." "Are you saying that to protect someone, or are you truly that naive?" After putting up with his temper and surliness for the past few days, Hester held on to what was left of her patience and said, "I am risking prison sheltering you. How dare you call me naive? Your lack of manners and gratitude could make me turn you in just to get you out of my house. Have a pleasant meal. I'll return in the morning for the tray." And she spun on her heels and left. He is being kind of a dick to someone who is literally taking care of him. As she is leaving, he notices this. He noticed her hands, however. Indigo. He'd only seen hands stained like hers a few times. He'd be willing to bet she'd been a slave in the Sea Islands of South Carolina, where he knew the few existing indigo plantations operated. Working the plants to extract the dye turned the palms and back of the hands of slaves permanently indigo. Judging by the way she spoke and carried herself, she'd been free for some time, though either that or she'd been educated down south, a scenario he found unlikely due to the deep richness of her skin. Educated slaves had a tendency to be mulatto like himself. Now, he is very observant. Like I said, he's looking at her. It's not hard to notice someone has indigo hands. But throughout him sitting in bed all damn day, he is very observant. He has to be. He's the Black Daniel. He's kind of like, the Black Daniel's kind of the Robin Hood, if you will, of like this novel. Very it's the Black Daniel. It's the Batman. Okay. So the fact that she has Batman in her house and she's taking care of him and Batman's being a dick. There is an abolition circle of women. And I enjoyed this because it's a bunch of white ladies and they're part of the abolitionist circle. And a lot of them are hiding it from their husbands. Okay. And it made me want to ask other white women, like, would you have put your toe out on that line and been like, yeah, I'll help the cause, even if it risks my husband finding out, even if it risks me going to jail? I know we say a lot today as allies, but think back to back then of what would you have done? How far would you have gone? Hester is at her home, and we have a scene with the Sheriff Lawson, and a man named Ezra Shue. And now Ezra Shue is a piece of shit. And he wants to search Hester's home because he is searching for the Black Daniel. And so he barges in and is an absolute racist, sexist monster. And it kind of reminded me of the scene in Inglourious Bastards where the main character guy that I cannot, oh God, he's a proclaimed actor. He's in that and he's in Django. Anyways, that man where he is a Nazi and he's going in all of those homes where they're hiding Jewish people. It gave very much that energy. Like Hester's just trying to like keep calm, knowing that she is literally like slave freeing Robin Hood in her basement. The sheriff isn't the worst because he is the sheriff and he does kind of have to like uphold a neutrality during these times, but he does not let Ezra release dogs into Hester's home. He's like, that's a little much. You're not going to release dogs into this woman's home. And then Ezra is such a piece of shit. He asks Hester, where did you get this house? And she's like, this is my family's house. Like, this was my Aunt Catherine's. I think her dad like built it back in the day or something. Oh yeah, that's right. Her dad earned his freedom fighting in the Revolutionary War. Earned his freedom, built this house. Her Aunt Catherine lived in it. And Ezra Shue says he can't believe a N-word fought in the war. And he doesn't find the Black Daniel because he doesn't even believe a black man built this house. Like, the things he says, again, it's probably just every day for an actual black person, but for a white person, you're just like, oh my God. But he essentially is just like, I don't believe your daddy was a black man who fought in the Revolutionary War. That's impossible. I don't think a black man is smart enough to build this house. And I don't think that you have the Black Daniel because you're just a dumb black woman. My God, can I help you? Like, can I help you, sir? You came to my house. Like, can you go? And luckily the sheriff's like, all right, Shue, like, he's not here. Let's get out of her hair. And he apologizes to Hester. But like, my God. And we have this. When Hester first came north, the sounds of the house at night always frightened her until her grandfather explained the creakings were just her ancestors tipping around, making sure everyone was having good dreams. As she grew older, she knew her grandfather's tale had just been that, a tale to soothe the fears of a scared child. However, she clung to that memory now, lying in the bed, listening to the house settle for the night. And I just thought that was a really cute way of thinking of like your house settling in and it's just your ancestors tucking you in and making sure that you're safe. We go to chapter 3. Hester scolds the Black Daniel because he keeps going outside to pee and shit. And she's like, we have Shue and his henchmen running around trying to look for you and you're just going to walk outside to go pee? Like, man, swallow your pride and pee in the corner. Okay? We learn his name is Galen. Okay? He wasn't born the Black Daniel. And they have a witty little debate. You very sharp claws, Indigo. Are you one of those women who has no use for men? Hester almost missed the question because her brain stuck on hearing him name her Indigo. No, some of the men I'm acquainted with are stellar individuals. Galen thought the name Indigo fit her well. Her hands were the only parts of her he could see without real difficulty. However, it did occur to him that she might find the name offensive, so he said, I didn't mean to offend you by pegging you Indigo, Miss White. Code names are in the line of my work. Since your hands are so distinctive, he shrugged, I apologize. The name does not offend me, she replied truthfully. She found his gentle regard for her feelings surprising, though. I was once told my hands would brand me a slave for the remainder of my years. They were correct. But as long as it doesn't brand who you are in your heart, the color of your hands, like the color of your skin, is of no consequence. I thought that was really cute. She's so self-conscious about her hands, which I understand why. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, why, girl? I get it. But it is nice that he, like, tells her it doesn't matter. We learn that Hester's father died. We knew that in the prologue. He died of wasting disease. Her mother, she does not know where she is, if she's alive or dead. And she has a fiance in England. Hester is engaged. Wow. And they have this cute little exchange. Like, now he's getting better, so he's kind of getting more playful with her. She returned with his breakfast a few minutes later and then left him to eat. When she came back to fetch his tray, she found he'd eaten all of the soft-cooked eggs and potatoes, but the draught he was supposed to drink for the pain in his ribs and ankles stood untouched in the small tin cup. You didn't drink your medicine, she stated. It puts me to sleep. I can't think if I'm asleep. You won't be able to fully think at all if you don't recover fully. He still bore a startling resemblance to Homer's Cyclops. The one eye, so riveting, stared out at a face less swollen, but more distinctively colored in bruises of violet, yellow, and blue. You must drink this draught. He answered by asking, how long have you lived in this house? Since my 9th year, and I'm not the person under discussion here. Drink this. She thrust the cup at him. He looked up at her. Although she could feel herself begin to shake, she neither flinched nor backed down. He asked, sounding a bit amused, if I drink it, will you go away? Hastily, she replied. To her surprise, he took the cup from her hand, but he didn't drink. Instead, he placed it firmly upon the small table beside the bed. We need to talk about this traitor. Hester could not believe this man. We have nothing to discuss until you are in better condition. Look at you. A simple meal makes you break out in a fit of sweat. Hester reached down, picked up the cup. In a calm voice, she said, fine, don't drink it. I shall simply put it in your food like I would for a stubborn child. She headed to the concealed door. He growled, you wouldn't dare. She turned back. If only that were true. Hester White, I'll be back later. Galen was still bellowing her name when the wall swung closed. So they're getting off to a cute little start. Okay. But Hester obviously does have traitor anxiety. Isn't there a show called Traitors? It's like that. Like it's that, but like with actual people's lives, because there's someone in her church, in her community, that is getting black members of the community like taken back down south. Somebody is not an ally. I just like I always like food descriptions in books. Breakfast this morning consisted of piping hot hominy, a mound of eggs, cooked maple sugar apples spiced with cinnamon, and 3 fat biscuits running with melted butter. That sounds delicious. B, remember her friend who's like a nurse. B gave her some ointment. Galen has to put this ointment on 3 times a day. Obviously, Hester has to help him. And he's enjoying it, okay? Because she's a beautiful young lady rubbing up on him. And we know men, they could literally be close to death, nearly beaten, and they're still going to get aroused. And so he's kind of like into it. And he says, how many times do I got to put this on? And she's like, I don't know, I think 3 times. And he's like, good. Because that means she gets to rub up on him 3 times a day. And Hester gets so like flushed and like flummoxed through all this. She's rubbing this very attractive man, down with ointment, and he's getting a little steamy, and she's like, I gotta go pick apples. And she lives on an orchard, and so she immediately is like, I'm gonna go pick apples. You rub that cream in and I will be back. And I kind of had like this one thought of like, of course she's gonna go pick apples, because right now she kind of in a weird way represents Eve. And she's kind of lived in this like little garden of oblivion. And now, temptation, lust, sin is in her home. She's going to go pick some apples in more ways than one. Okay. Galen hobbles out while she is getting her apples. And he apologizes, but he does discuss the land with her, because her family left her, like I said, an orchard. She owns a substantial amount of land, but then next door there's some drama. Like this dad built his daughter and her fiance a home, but then she ran away with another man, and so now the home's empty and the dad's all pissed. It's a weird like little tiny B plot. So we also hear what happened to Galen, and obviously he was a conductor in the Underground Railroad, and he was helping this family cross to different checkpoints. And I thought this was interesting. So those little black jockeys that hold a lantern out in people's yards? Like, we all know them. They're everywhere in the South for some reason. Well, I say for some reason. But y'all know what I'm talking about. Anyways, so many of the houses on the road had their porches or in their front yards a small statue of a black-skinned, red-coated jockey holding a lantern from its extended arms. If the lantern was lit, runaways knew it was safe to approach the house and ask for refuge. If the lantern was dark, travelers knew to move on because the area was not safe. Hester's home had sported such a jockey for many decades. It stood out by the road, and it lit the way back to the back of the house. Due to the lurking presence of Shu and his men, it hadn't been lit for days. So I thought that was interesting, because I never knew necessarily what those little black jockeys were about. She has to rub more salve on him, and he gets a big raging boner. And he sees her as an exotic indigo orchid because she's very ashamed of her hands and her feet. They are purple. And he tells her that he thinks of her and her skin as an exotic indigo orchid. And she smells of beautiful vanilla. And he's like, you're just an exotic little flower out here. You know, how often do you see someone with beautiful indigo skin? And she's just like, anyways, here's your medicine. We get to meet with the abolitionists, and a lot of them are actual factual historical people. But anyways, Hester has to reveal the location of the Black Daniel. She can't keep him to herself. But no, she really does have to, like, because everybody's panicking. The abolitionists included are just like, where the fuck is this Black Daniel? Like, who has him in their house so we can all be on the same page? And Hester is like, I have him. So now everybody knows where he is. And there's this one guy named William Lovejoy. And he kind of stood out to me because he's an abolitionist, okay? Hates slavery, not a racist bone in his body. But he doesn't think that women should be conductors on the Underground Railroad because they're women. And I'm like, so you can be not racist, but still sexist? Like, again, Black women, they just cannot get a fucking win, can they? Like, my God, it's one thing to be racist and then you're going to be like, now you're sexist. Okay, great. Can't fucking win with these white men. Galen is more of he thinks that in order to fight slavery, we have to take up arms. He is not a peaceful protester. He does not think that this war can be won peacefully. And here we have, until 1840, many abolitionists, both black and white, viewed abolitionism as a pacifistic endeavor. With the passage of the 1850 Fugitive Slave Law and the resulting kidnappers spreading terror across the North, many vigilant committee members were meeting slave catchers with guns drawn. Even Frederick Douglass, long a supporter of the nonviolent approach to abolition, had publicly voiced support for those who would take up arms to end slavery. Hester goes back home and she moves Galen out of the basement. She's like, everybody kind of knows you're here. Let's get some sunshine on you and get you out of this dusty basement. They pass by a black bathtub that was her Aunt Catherine's. And Galen's like, that's a real nice bathtub. And Hester is just like, well, I wouldn't know because I'm too busy being a busy woman and I don't have time for such frivolous little things. And Galen kind of lingers on that bathtub and you're just like, is there going to be a bathtub scene? There are a shit ton of secret passages in this house. It is perfect for underground railroading. And here we have some laws I found very interesting, okay? So we had that 1850 law. But we have 1793 predecessor. The law forbade the escaping of slaves from one state to another. I think we're seeing the same thing right now with abortions. It also denied arrested fugitives the right to trial by jury and the right to take the stand in their own defense. Instead, Congress appointed special commissioners to try the cases. See, I didn't know that. If a commissioner decided in favor of the slave owner, the commissioner received $10, but only $5 if the fugitive won. Excuse me? Hello? That's like, what? Who thought that was going to be a fair trial? Anyways, it goes on. Abolitionists called the payments nothing more than glorified bribes. True. But Congress justified the discrepancy by saying the commissioners deserved the payments for the time spent processing all the documents needed to send a slave south. Bless their hearts, all that paperwork to send a human being to slavery. The penalties for assisting or harboring an escaped slave were stiffened by the law, and any U.S. Marshal or federal deputy who refused to help a slave owner reclaim his property faced a stiff $1,000 fine. Given such carte blanche, slave owners and their slave hunters repeatedly abused the edict. Imagine that. They felt free to bring before the federal commissioners any individual of color, whether they legally owned them previously or not. In some cases, they bypassed the law altogether and simply kidnapped the fugitive and just took them south. In some ways, history has changed so much, and I'm so proud of us. But in some ways, I'm just like, wow, that sounds real familiar. We learned that Galen was in a Carolina prison for 3 years for his slave freeing. I also loved this, okay, y'all? Here we have her getting ready in the morning. She set the plate on a tray, added a large steaming cup of coffee, silver, and a clean linen napkin. Because she and the women of her circle practice free produce, Hester didn't keep sugar in the house. Free produce supporters hoped to strike at slavery by affecting the slave owners' profits. Supporters did not use or consume any products made by slave labor, and so they did without items such as sugar, rice, and American-raised cotton. The women who could afford them purchased the higher-priced English or Egyptian cotton fabrics, even though they were in some instances coarser and not finely as woven as their American counterparts. Those women unable to afford the imported fabrics made do with their old gowns, choosing principle over fashion. Galen knows, this is such a turn, like from all of that history to like back to them too. But anyways, Galen knows he's hot. He is a ladies' man, okay? He's like, once I heal up and I don't look like a cyclops, she's gonna be into me. Hester, however, although she is a woman who is reacting womanly to Galen, she's more terrified of him than turned on. Because this is a grown man in her house. It is very scary, okay? He wonders just how innocent she is because she's not really like understanding his sexual innuendos. And he's kind of wondering like she's more than a virgin. Like this girl does not know anything. To which is just like a man. They see somebody who is pure, who is innocent, who is naive to sexual relations. And they're like, well, I have to fucking ruin that. I can't let that woman go another day without knowing what a dick looks like. Like, what is with men in that? Why do they do that? However, he does discover he eats a shit ton of food, and he then kind of notices she's not been eating, and he gets very upset. And he's like, why haven't you been eating? And she's like, well, because all the food goes to you. I need you to heal and get strong, and I don't have enough food for 2 people. And he's like, what the fuck? Girl, Hester, my dear, bless her heart. Okay, she means well, but Galen will learn. It's just like, Hester, girl, you do not have to do this. He has this internal monologue, which I love to hear. God, she was beautiful. Even with his limited vision, he had no difficulty discerning the fact. Her skin looked like the gift of an African night goddess, dark with the true colors of her ancestry. The sable highlights beneath added just the luster of a face as clear as precious obsidian. The jet diamond eyes sat beneath lashes so long they brushed her cheeks. And I thought that was a beautiful, because let's be honest, we don't get a lot of black women, much less people of color, in these novels. If you read a lot of main characters have milky white skin like the moon, milky white skin. To hear a different skin tone being appreciated, oh, it's so refreshing. It's so refreshing. Although, hey, hello, I'm white. I do have very dark brown eyes, and I, along with my black sisters, get very tired of reading about goddamn green and blue-eyed bitches. But let us have some too, okay? Brown eyes are beautiful. They're like little chocolates in our eyes, little hot coffees. Hester, to make money, writes anti-slavery tracts for an English publisher. She offers piano lessons to the children, and she sells apples. Galen experienced the overwhelming urge to protect her, but he knew the prideful little Indigo would toss him out on his ears should he ever propose to help her escape the pinch of poverty. He didn't know why he hadn't figured out her strained position sooner. Her clothing stated her need quite plainly. Her garments were always clean and pressed, but the cuffs at her wrist and the hems of her skirts were frayed with age. He knew she practiced free produce, and he thought the vow she'd taken to be a noble one. However, the women of his circle back home would have reduced such clothing to polishing rags long ago. Hester carried herself as if the old gowns were made of woven gold. Oh, she's such a class act, y'all. I love her. She's a class act. She takes his food up to him and doesn't know he's in the tub. he openly flirts with her. This naked man is in this tub and he is openly flirting with her. And she's like, please get dressed. And he's like, okay. And he just stands up and she's like, oh my God, no, like, let me turn around. And she turns around and he's like getting dressed and he's thinking this is hilarious. He's like, this poor little girl, like, bless her heart. I just love this. Like, if this was in a TV series, a giant, gorgeous man is getting out of the tub and putting his little towel on. And Hester's turned away, but then she kind of peeks in the reflection of the mirror to like see his booty. And he notices and he like looks at her and winks. And she's like, oh my God, he saw. Galen knows French because he is from Louisiana. He is a Louisiana boy. That's probably why he is such a little deviant, okay? Louisiana men, I don't know if any of y'all have ever been with one, but they are little devils. Little devils, all of them. We have a flashback to Hester as a child on the Indigo farms. And she's not with her mama. She is with her friend Ella and Ella's mama. And they're just little girls and they're playing. And they don't understand slavery. And so Hester and Ella are squeezing Indigo. And they're like, I'm going to have my hands just as dark as my mama's. Because they think that's such a proud thing to have. You know, because their mama works so hard. Her hands are so purple, indigo. And so these little girls are like, our hands are going to be just as dark as yours. And of course, that breaks Ella's mama's heart. She's like, please don't. I don't want you to. And I just, you know, it's one of those moments you look back as a kid and you think you understand like adult things. And then you're like, oh. Hester was sold again when she was 8 years old. And I have a 9-year-old. Well, I have a lot of kids, but I have a 9-year-old. And I just cannot fathom the pain of losing any of my children, but an 8-year-old, like all of the ages, obviously atrocious. There's no prime age to be sold from your family, but it just made me think of my 9-year-old, and I was just imagining and having so much empathy for the women and men who had their children stripped away from them. And understanding why Hester's dad chopped her pinky off so he could identify her. Because, I mean, hello, they don't have IDs and stuff. Anybody can forge paperwork. So how do you know your child is like yours? Especially if they're taken away when they're 3, 4, 5. I think we can all agree. Fucked up shit. Fucked up shit. And the fact people are trying to erase this history. Anyways, she is a free slave. Okay? Hester is free. They go for a walk. Okay? They go for a lovely little walk. We're learning more information. And Galen asks about Hester's fiance. Because remember, she's engaged. Now, she is engaged to a man named Foster. And Foster is a Canadian freeborn. And he is in England studying. And they are marrying for companionship. He's not super into Hester. And Hester's not really attracted to him. But back in the day, you kind of just had to marry when you were that age. And if you didn't have anybody kind of like lined up, you know. So I do think what she did was understandable. Not everybody can hold out for love back then. So she was just marrying for companionship. And here we have why Hester doesn't really believe in the idea of love. Well, I've never been in love either, but when I see what it has done to people who have, it brings only sadness. Take the circumstances love forced upon my father. Take my neighbor, Branton Hubble. He loved my Aunt Catherine all his free life, and she loved him. They spent nearly 30 years pining for one another because he chose to be an honorable man and remain loyal to the wife he had to leave behind when he escaped Kentucky. Then there's poor Bethany Ann Lovejoy. Do you know why she ran away? She made the mistake of falling in love with Sheriff Lawson's son, David, and David loves her. But in some parts of this country, their love is a jailable offense. She couldn't bear to marry another. If I need more examples, I only have to sit at Kate Bell's house and listen to the woeful tale of love her patrons tell her. So no, Galen, I do not wish to marry for love. I don't need misery in my life. Not wrong, okay? She's not wrong, okay? Those are very, very good examples as to why love doesn't always work out. And as her and Galen are going over her childhood, like she's saying she had to study triple as hard as anybody else to catch up to the kids her age. She had to learn to read. She had to learn to write. She had to learn to be a lady. She had to learn to play the piano. She had a lot of catching up to do when her aunt finally bought her freedom. And Galen, because he's a jovial Louisiana man, realizes she never had a childhood. She never had the luxury and the privilege of a childhood. Surely you did girl things for fun, played with dolls, made mud pies? She laughed. Mud pies? Have you any idea what my aunt would have done if I had came home covered with river mud? No, Galen, I had a few dollies, but I never played in the mud in my life. Then let's go make mud pies, he yelled, snatching her by her hand. Before Hester could protest, she found herself being pulled down the bluff in his wake. Laughing, she yelled, but I don't want to make mud pies. He didn't ease his pace or his hold on her captured hand. Galen, she called over her giggles, you can't make me make mud pies against my will. The last word was a laugh-filled scream as Hester reacted, being scooped up into Galen's arms. She came to rest cradled against his broad chest, her hands around his neck. He stared down into her startled face and said, you were saying? Hester blinked and wondered if she would ever breathe again. Because of her scrambled brains, all she could think was, you're going to re-injure your ankle. I've carried birds that weighed more than you. He was so near and so overpowering, Hester could feel herself on the verge of fainting for the very first time in her life. His hot nearness seemed to have burned away the fabric of her blouse. You must put me down, she told him in a voice far softer and more strangled than she intended. Are you going to come make mud pies with me or not? For the life of her, Hester couldn't speak. She couldn't believe how hard her heart was pounding. She knew agreeing would be undoubtedly alter her life forever, but she said yes. He eased her to her feet, took her indigo hand, and said, let's go. And they go make mud pies. It's so fucking cute. It's the cutest thing I've ever read, ever. He fucking goes and they make mud pies and they sling mud at each other and they make little mud castles and it's so cute. Again, I want this to be a TV little short series. Like I want all these books to just be little short series because this scene right here would be the cutest scene. Of like this like injured bandaged man, but he's hot and he sees this beautiful woman who is so ashamed of things that make her beautiful, like her skin and her purple hands and things that make her unique. Obviously they have trauma. I understand that. I'm not sitting here just being like, girl, why don't you appreciate your purple hands that remind you of your slavery in childhood? Like I'm not crazy, but I'm just saying he is trying to get her to see the beauty in what brought her pain. Rolled up shorts and skirts and just two adults being kids. And I think that's so fucking great because honestly, that's always my advice. You know, at weddings when they're just like, does anyone have any advice for the couple? And I always grab the mic and I say, always bring out the inner child in each other. It's one thing to be passionate. It's one thing to be sexy. It's one thing to be in love and then to be adults and handle adult things together like the bills and taxes and the government. But also be kids together. Go play soccer outside. Go play tag. Play Marco Polo in the pool. Make mud pies together. I don't know. Whatever you want to do. Like me and my husband, we are so childish. We collect and trade Pokemon cards with each other. We buy each other toys from our childhood that we all loved. And have our child, like our inner child. Like me and my husband, I'm not saying we're like the best couple ever. I promise you, we fight just as much as any other couple. But I do think what makes us work is that we are just two kids together in like these big adult bodies. Like we are just two little chubby kids from Louisiana that really liked Pokemon and not a lot of other kids did. I totally think Galen and her making mud pies is, if I was like a therapist, I would be like, go do something like that. Go do something childish with your spouse. We have this moment with them. Galen said, you are the contrariest woman I've ever met. Hester snorted. Contrarious? What kind of word is contrarious? French? He grinned. Be careful, baby girl. I bite. I'll give you more French than you'll know what to do with. The heat in his eyes made her heart race even faster than before. What on earth does that mean? You're the one laughing at my vocabulary. You tell me. Hester felt as if she'd just walked into a wolf's den, and it was the most tantalizing and forbidding place she'd ever entered. Now, he said coaxingly, take off your shoes, please, or so help me, I will come over there and kiss you so long and deep, those ugly little brogans will melt off your feet. Hester swayed on legs, suddenly turned to sand. You are incorrigible, and this is only the beginning, he promised her. Galen smiled. Now is that so bad? You have lovely little purple toes. Hester glanced down at her feet. A real gentleman would not mention a lady's bare feet, she said with mock rebuke. A real lady wouldn't be out in her bare feet, he said. Her reaction, an offended sounding gasp, made him laugh aloud. He told her, I'm sorry, but you're so prim sometimes it's hard not to tease you. You need more fun in your la petite. I'm here at your service. Now come over here and play with me. In spite of Hester's initial misgivings, she did have fun. She and Galen sat on the river's edge and made mud pies and castles complete with bridges and moats. That's so cute. He taught her how to skip stones and call to ducks on the river. They looked at clouds, dug for pirate gold, and fed on one another's smile. When the sun began its slow slide below the horizon, they both knew the time had come to head back. They'd been at the river all day. That's so cute. Oh, I could talk about this for hours, but I won't. Okay. They go home. Obviously, they got to clean up. Okay. Hester is bathing in the kitchen because back then, you had to like heat water for your tub and stuff. So a lot of baths were in the kitchen. She does this after Galen takes a bath and like eats and stuff, and he goes to bed. So she's doing this like in the middle of the night to herself. And it's funny because Galen comes downstairs for some ham, and he's looking at her, and she's in this little tub in the kitchen. And she's like, I thought you were asleep. And he's like, I just wanted a piece of ham. I didn't know you were up. And she puts on the ugliest nightgown. And she just doesn't spend her money on frivolities like nightgowns. And he laughs until he cries, looking at her. He nearly pisses himself, laughing at how ugly and homely that damn nightgown is. But he makes her cry. Hester cries because he's laughing at her. So he walks up to her. And he apologizes. He's like, I'm so sorry, but you are so beautiful. You do not need to be in these ugly ass mama gowns, girl. And he kisses her on her brow and ... Again, maybe in my Patreon, I will cover the details. I will give y'all this little thing, okay? I have here. He sucks her nipple through that ugly ass gown. That's what I wrote on with a gel pen. Sucks her nipples through that ugly ass gown. That night, after a steamy kitchen moment, she is going to bed. However, Galen comes in and he must leave now. And there is a Monsieur Levesque who is there, and he's like, Monsieur, we must go. And Galen's like, I gotta go be the Black Daniel. Remember, I'm kind of like a big deal. I can't just like hang out here and play and make mud pies with you. I'd love to. Don't get me wrong, but I do have to go to work. And he says, this is not goodbye. I am going to come back to Whitaker. But when you see me, pretend you don't know me. Okay? And it's a very sad scene because like now she's just sitting in that quiet ass house alone. We go all the way, time skip to March. Okay? And Andre Renaud bought the house next door. Remember I told you like a dad built it for his daughter and the daughter ran off with the sheriff's son. Anyways, someone bought that house. And so Hester's like, great, we have neighbors. Bleh. And here we have this exchange, okay? We need to learn who this neighbor is because it's important. And this is Mr. Lovejoy, and he's a Frenchman. As you've undoubtedly heard, my employer is very interested in purchasing some of the land surrounding his new home. He's willing to offer you... While Hester waited, Renaud extracted a pen and paper from his small valise and wrote something on the paper. He handed the paper to her. Her eyes widened at the number written down. Mr. Renault, this is entirely too much. Too much? Mr. Renault, I know what my land is worth. Were I the greediest woman in the world, I would not have asked for such an outrageous sum. He stared at her as if she'd grown two heads. She said, surely your employer is not so wealthy he can afford to pay 3 times the value. Truth be told, he is, but do you not want to sell? In reality, I don't, but circumstances force me to. But you won't accept my employer's offer? I will accept a reasonable offer, yes. Well, Miss White, what about this? And once again, he scribbled a figure on the paper and handed it to her. It was less than the original offer, but still more than Hester would have dreamed of asking. However, she thought about all the good she could do with this boon. Even if she gave a good portion to the cause, she would still have ample funds to see to her own needs for quite some time. She looked over at Mr. Renaud, who seemed to be very perplexed, and she said, I accept. My employer will be very pleased. Before leaving, Renaud said, Miss White, I have a note here from my employer expressing his thanks. Hester took the note from his hand, then closed the door after his coach pulled away. The wax seal had a dragon pressed onto the expensive envelope. Hester gently peeled it open and read, quote, My dear Indigo, thank you for the land, Galen. What? Can you imagine if, like, this whirlwind romance you had a season ago bought the land and the house next door? What? When that happened, I was like, oh, you son of a snake. So Galen knows all of those secret passageways in her home, and now he's her neighbor. So he just shows up in the middle of the night, watches her sleep. I know that's a thing in this novel, like a romantic thing. Don't do that. Don't ever watch somebody sleep. Unless they're like in a coma and like need observation. Don't do it. Not romantic at all. And he leaves a rose on her pillow. And I'm like, I know in context it's supposed to be super cute, but I would be like, oh my God, he can just come in here all the time. The next day, Hester gets a delivery, and a Frenchman brings crates upon crates of, you guessed it, beautiful, amazing nightgowns. I don't know if y'all have caught this, but Galen, the Black Daniel, is a gajillionaire. It is now April. A month has gone by. And Shu, remember Ezra Shu, that piece of shit, he has gone south. So everybody's kind of like, okay, we don't know who the traitor was still, but we can breathe a sigh of relief. And guess who shows up? Foster, her fiance. Keep in mind, Hester and Galen have not gotten to interact since he has moved next door. Because remember, they're not supposed to like know each other technically, but he just leaves flowers in her house in the middle of the night. It's about the only interaction they've gotten for a month. Anyways, Hester goes to pick up her fiance, Foster. Hester spotted Foster over by a pile of luggage stacked trackside. She took a moment to observe him. The slightly balding Foster, with his plain brown face and short rounded figure, would never be considered handsome, but he was dependable and true. She didn't need to be in love to pledge her life to him. Welcome back. How was the passage? Tedious. The purser refused cabins to all the blacks on board. We were forced to either sleep in the hold or stay on deck. However, something wonderful happened as a result. I don't know why I'm making him sound like that. Bear with me. Still holding her hands, he looked her in the face and smiled. Hester, I've taken a wife. Hester's eyes widened. Her name is Janine, and Hester, she is the most beautiful and gracious creature I've ever had the opportunity to meet. He paused a moment to chuckle. She's not smart like you. I'll never be able to debate anything of substance with her, but I don't care. Hester couldn't believe her ears. Foster, Hester, I know you and I were to be wed, but I'm in love. For the first time in my life, I've been impaled by Cupid's arrow, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. And Hester's like, what? You're married? Okay. And here we have, let's meet the wife, okay? Her name is Janine, remember? Where is Janine now? Right over here. Come and meet her. She goes to meet Janine. She was indeed as beautiful as described. In a sweet little voice, she asked, "Is this your friend Hester?" Foster beamed with loving looks. "Janine Quint, this is indeed Hester Wyatt. Hester, Janine." Hester nodded. Pleased to meet you, Janine. Welcome." "Oh, thank you. I just knew you'd hate me for taking Foster from you. Frosty kept telling me not to worry, that you wouldn't mind, but I did worry." Hester kept the smile pasted on her face as she turned to Frosty. He had the decency to duck away from her pointed look. Hester tried to reassure the new bride. "There's no need to worry. Foster is correct." "I'm so relieved to hear you say so. I've been dreading this moment since he told me about you. He thinks the world of you. Did you know?" "Not enough to wire me and prepare me for this humiliating event," she thought to herself. So that is a bold fucking move. A bold fucking move. My God, to go pick up your fiance and he's brought his wife? What? And he's ugly. Like, he's not a catch. Oh my God. Anyways, they are gone to take Foster and Janine to, I forget where. I think Foster's making like a school in Whitaker or something. Anyways, and so Hester's giving him a fucking ride. They get stuck. Foster leaves the carriage to go get help. And he pulls up with another carriage, shows up on the road. And it's a very nice carriage. And of course, it's Galen. It's funny because Galen steps out of his expensive ass fucking Rolls Royce carriage. And it's got a lot of dragons on it. Like, dragons are his thing. We'll learn why. And he goes like, "Enchanté, madame." And Hester's like, "Galen, I'm about to crack your knuckles. Shut the fuck up right now." Like, you can tell he's enjoying this. He's just like, "Oh, hey, Hester. Is this your fiance and his wife?" Like, he is loving this. He loves the drama of it. He does, however, give her a look up and down and says, "You are still in those god-awful shoes." Like, he hates Hester's clothes. Hates them. When they get into the carriage, however, she notices that the carriage interior is indigo. And he's like, "I just had it all redone. Do you like it?" And here, let's have an interaction between Foster, okay, and Galen. They're all in this carriage. It's probably the most awkward fucking carriage ride. "What is your discipline?" "Philosophy. The race needs more men like myself, wouldn't you agree? Men able to debate back the opposition on an equal plane. Men able to strike back with the words of Plato and Aristotle." "The race has enough philosophers, Mr. Quint. What we need more are men with guns." "Surely you're making sport of me." "Unfortunately, I am not. Philosophers can debate until the second coming, but only bloodshed will resolve the issue once and for all." "I agree that is a possibility, but—" "You promised no politics, remember?" "I'm sorry, love. Mr. Vachon, maybe you and I will have the opportunity to discuss this in length in the near future." "I'd be pleased." "Where are you from, Mr. Vachon?" "Louisiana." "Oh, I knew a man from Louisiana. Creole, just like you. He used to get in fights all the time." "Why?" "Folks kept telling him he wasn't black. You ever have that problem, Mr. Vachon?" "Occasionally, and I find it always a pleasure to meet someone from the Race Inclusion Board. After all, where would the race be without them telling us who may be in the race and who may not?" Everyone chuckled. "So you consider yourself a member of the race?" It was an odd question, Hester thought. Galen's eyes met Hester's for a fleeting second before he turned his attention back to Janine. "Yes, Miss Quint, I consider myself a member of the race. Why would I not?" And they go off like kind of how awkward this conversation is, but Hester thought about Janine's observation. There were those who believed men and women with mixed blood could not be trusted on matters concerning the race because they were perceived as having divided loyalties. On the other side, there were mulattoes who would never let Hester enter their circle because of the darkness of her skin. She thought the prejudices of both sides ridiculous. The fight against slavery consisted of soldiers representing the full spectrum of race, Just because one had light-toned skin did not mean that person could vote or testify in a court of law or avail themselves of any of the other rights denied by their darker brethren. Galen invites Foster and Janine and Hester over to his place for dinner. Remember, he's next door. He's like, come to my new house. Let's have a party. And here we have this cute little exchange. Foster said, they're all at dinner. Foster said to Galen, I see you take syrup in your coffee. Are you a free producer, Mr. Vachon? Galen stirred his cup and replied easily, I fell victim to an accident this past fall. The woman who nursed me was a free producer. I developed a fondness for the syrup. And for her. Hester choked on her tea and began to cough. You know, she was like, excuse me. Foster says that Hester is, quote, no beauty, which is wild to say at dinner. Wild to say at dinner. Like, I know you don't love me and you're like, wife's here, but you don't have to drag me. He's going to sit there and just be like, well, Mr. Vachon, like Hester here, she's no beauty, but you know, she was a good enough fit for me. Like, and Hester's just like, what? Like, her and Galen are just like, are we eating dinner with this person? Who are these people? Like, what? It's just a wild thing for a man to like just say with his whole chest, like, well, she's no beauty. Like, sir. As they're saying goodnight, Galen makes a joke of like, I will show up in your bed, Hester. And she says, that sounds suspiciously like blackmail. And he bowed and he says, and a black male is what I am. See you later. He's so snarky. He is such a snarky little man. I love it. That's so stupid. This is like blackmail. And he's going to say, and a black male is what I am. Get out of here. Get out of here. She goes to Galen's, I forget for what, but she goes to him for something. And there he is in a meeting with like huge names in the Underground Railroad, not Harriet Tubman. But William Lambert, George de Baptiste, members of the Order of the African American Mysteries, individuals in the Michigan Underground Railroad. And it kind of just goes into a brief history of these men and their works. But she meets the man that freed her. She meets the man named John Brown because she recognizes his blue eyes. He was a white man. And he technically, so what they would do is they would quote unquote buy slaves. And then they would turn them around and go free them. And that's what he did for her. Because if Aunt Catherine went and bought her as a black woman, obviously that's not going to go down. So Aunt Catherine hires these abolitionists who are white, and they go and they buy their family members for them and free them. And so that's what this man, John Brown, who is in Galen's home. So it's a very sweet reunion. They do argue, her and Galen do argue over his love bombing. Because let's be honest, it is giving love bombing. Every time he sees her missing something in her life, like shoes, he sends her crates of shoes. And she needs a nightgown. So he's going to send her the most beautiful nightgowns from all of Paris. And it's a lot for Hester. She's never, when you've grown up in poverty and you're an ex-slave, it would be very difficult to take in that level of luxury and extravagance. And she's a smart woman, okay? She's just like, I know you're just love bombing me because you think I'm a cute little thing next door. Galen has the point of she deserves these things. She is an amazing woman. She has been through so much. He's like, girl, put on the damn silk nightgown and be pretty. You're beautiful. Forget what Foster said at dinner. Again, I just cannot believe that man with his whole chest looked at a woman in the eyes and just said, well, she's no beauty. Right, Galen? Like, what? Why would you say? The audacity. Anyways, Galen kisses Hester for the first time on the mouth. And he says, quote, deny this and you deny yourself. And he's just technically saying like, girl, you deserve to be loved. And that's hard for her. That's hard for her. Now he does finger her. Again, I won't go into details. You'll have to pay $3 for that. I don't know if I'll do this one on the Patreon. If y'all want me to, I will. Let me know. But anyways, he fingers her. But the head housemaid named Maxie interrupts them. And she's a great character. She's a wonderful little head of the Galen's household. And she interrupts them. And she's just like, I know y'all are not fingering in my kitchen. It makes me think of, what's that Queen Latifah and Dolly Parton movie where they're like gospel singers and their kids, like I think it's like Dolly Parton's grandson and Queen Latifah's daughter are like obviously in love, and they're rival choir churches. And so it's like Romeo and Juliet. But it's hilarious because like they're making out on the kitchen counter and like Dolly Parton's like, we eat on that, get off. Maxie later, as Hester goes home, she tells Galen, she's known him his whole life, so she's kind of like a mama figure to him, and she's like, either marry that woman or leave her alone. Because remember, Galen's a playboy and Maxie knows this, and she's like, either marry her or fucking leave her alone because she's a good girl. She's a good girl. We cut to Galen goes and visits his family. Okay. And I just have this. Grandma is a bitch, but she has money, so everyone grovels. She's got a shit ton of money, and so everybody trips over themselves to see who she can yell at the quickest, I guess. She doesn't approve of Galen, much less his existence, because he was born of, obviously, mixed parentage, and she just doesn't really like that he exists. He asks his aunt Racine be the lady in his home. Okay, because back then he was a bachelor and he had his bachelor pad, but he couldn't like have a woman like Hester just come over with like, I know they're adults, but they still had to have like weird chaperones. I don't know. She's a lady. She couldn't just go to a random man's house by herself with no other women around. So he asks his aunt, can you come stay at my house for a few months so I can court Hester properly? Luckily, his aunt is a wonderful person. His grandma's still a bitch. Hester, cut to her. She is in town fabric shopping. She's got a little money. Obviously, Galen shows up at the shop and she's like, what are you doing here? And he says, I came in to pick up some sugar Maxie ordered. And you? Had some time on my hands until I met Gail, so I thought I'd look at dress material. He reached past her and picked up a bolt of silk. I noticed you were admiring this silk. It is quite beautiful. Are you going to purchase it? Oh, no. Why not? Look at that price. And? Maybe for you the price means nothing, but for me that's quite steep. I'll buy it for you. No, you will not. Why not? Consider it my way of saying thanks for having such good care of me back in October. You've given me enough gifts. Then let me buy you some gowns. Shall we go shopping? No, let me treat you to lunch. Galen! Either lunch or I'll kiss you right here and now. You don't want to be responsible for making that poor woman fall off her stool, do you? You are outrageous, incorrigible, and the man who taught you how to make mud pies. Don't forget to mention that. All right, where are we going? He is determined to get her to shine. He's just like, my God, I'm going to make you into my beautiful little indigo flower, whether you like it or not. So they're going to lunch and they're in a carriage. They're in his carriage, his dragon carriage, okay? Obviously, and I have a star next to it for like Patreon ? Obviously, steamy things happen in the carriage. They don't have sex, okay? Because it is a carriage and she's in like a bustle. But fun things happen. Fun carriage activities. And we cut back to Foster. She runs back into Foster. And this man, y'all, Foster has the audacity, okay? This man gonna invite her to his wedding. He says, please come to my wedding. Janine is so shy. She's so shy, and you're the only girl that she knows in town. Please come to the wedding. And Hester's like, do I have to? And I have here, she ain't going to that wedding. But she gets a package in the mail. Okay? She gets a package in the mail. She pulls it out. What is it, guys? What is it, y'all? It is an ivory silk gown made from that silk that she fingered. Not got fingered, but that she thumbed. And he had her a gown made. An ivory gown. And she's like, God damn it, I guess I am going to go to that wedding. I can't not. I got this gown. But the card with the gown says, quote, your wishes are mine to make true. And that's so sweet. Oh, he's so fucking sweet. But just like Hester, I'm like, I don't know. It is love bombing. Enjoy it, but be wary. Be wary. She shows up to Foster's wedding like Cinderella. Okay. She is crashing this wedding looking fucking beautiful. As she should. Galen is also at the wedding. And what is he wearing, y'all? A velvet indigo suit. He's wearing a suit made of indigo, and she shows up in that beautiful ivory gown. I mean, what, whose wedding is this? Whose wedding is this? They have a wonderful time. Will Galen show up at her home that night? I don't know. So she goes home. She's had such a wonderful fairy tale evening. She's felt beautiful. Galen showered her in love and attention. Foster, of course, was beside himself with like, oh, Hester, you look beautiful. Anyways, and so she finally opens up one of those beautiful silk little nightgowns, okay? And she's in her room, and she puts one on, and it's an emerald green one, gorgeous. But she's got these like ugly ass granny panty bloomers. And it says that she's never, what is it? Hester had never gone naked beneath her clothing ever. She realized the bulky drawers looked silly peeking out from beneath the thin silk, and she doubted a lover would be pleased by the sight. Lifting the gown, she undid the drawer strings and stepped out of them. And with a high kick, she propelled the drawers towards the bed. She's feeling it. She's feeling the fantasy. Of course, Galen shows up in the secret entrance, and she's like, can you not use the front door? And he's like, well, do you want everybody in town to know I'm here? Like, girl, shut up. Anyways, we kind of learned his backstory of like why he was in that South Carolina prison. And he was there because he says, I was once as optimistic as you, but after my naivete landed me in a South Carolina prison for 3 years, I was cured. Traitors can be anyone. Mothers, fathers, individuals you may know and love. I went to prison because I was betrayed by the husband of a woman I tried to help escape. He didn't want to join her? No. He thought his first loyalty was to his master, and it outweighed all else. He found his wife's desire for freedom dishonorable. It's slavery that's dishonorable. He didn't view it that way. How did you get out of prison? Levesque. My punishment for slave stealing was 3 years of hard labor, after which I was to be sold deep south. The day I was put on the block, I was purchased by a ringer named Raymond, who bribed to pose as a legitimate planter. And that was over a decade and a half ago. He was 20. How old is he now? Damn. Anyways, so that's why he went to prison. And he's very wary of everybody. And he's still trying to find who is the snake in the grass in this town. And here they have their little chit chat, but obviously, you know, he sees her in that gorgeous nightgown. He was seated on the edge of the bed. Don't worry, petite. There will be no harm in this. You will remain as chaste as you are now. After we marry, it will be different. Galen, I'm not marrying you. Yes, you probably are. No, I'm not. Do you want your treat or not? I'm not marrying you. Why would you want to marry me? It certainly wouldn't be for your obedience. Now lie back. Galen. He leaned over and kissed her with such magnificent passion she nearly swooned. He slowly backed away. As she sat there, eyes closed, he clouded things further by gently feasting on her breast until she moaned softly. Now lie back, he commanded. Hester melted back onto the mattress without a further word. And things happen. Again, if y'all want to know, let me know, and I'll put it in the Patreon for $3. But things happen. Again, she's still a virgin, okay? But hey, there's a lot of ways to have some fun. Now, we have Hester. She is talking with Gail, and they're having tea. But as Gail leaves, Hester sits and broods over her life. She didn't believe for a minute Galen's professed desire to make her his wife. Just because she lived in the country didn't mean she had turnips for brains. Surely he didn't believe her to be that naive. She and Galen were from two different worlds. She knew from her school lessons a bit about the Louisiana Creoles. They were known as the free people of color. Their ancestry embraced most of the European races that came to America's shores, but it was the African blood in their veins which tied them to the rest of the blacks in America. That common thread made them subject to all the restrictions and dangers facing the race as a whole. Having lived in Louisiana under both Spanish and French rule, many of the blacks there were free before America was even born. Over time, they amassed enough wealth to establish successful businesses and found their own schools and newspapers. Many families sent their sons to France to be educated, thereby circumventing America's segregation. During the War of 1812, free black brigades played a pivotal role in Andrew Jackson's victory at Chalmers. In December of 1814, Jackson issued a proclamation thanking them for their service to the nation during its time of need. His words on that day were now a treasured part of the race's history. During Hester's school years, Jackson's proclamation had been routinely assigned as a memorization piece. Now, obviously, Andrew Jackson, colorful figure in history, but an interesting tidbit nonetheless about the Creoles in Louisiana. Because I know, obviously, I'm from Louisiana, and I've grown up with all kinds of terminology, like my mama would say, like mulatta, high yellow, Creole, all kinds of things that can and can be seen as slurs nowadays. Honestly, I've seen some people be offended at those, so I don't say any of them. But if you go to Louisiana and someone above the age of 40 is around, they will probably use that terminology. But it usually just means someone of mixed race. All right, y'all. Hester's got to break her friend out of jail. Shue has put some girl in jail. I forgot why. Doesn't need a reason. He just is being a fucking cunt. Puts her in jail. So Hester and her girls, they go to the jail. They tell the sheriff, look, we got to give her a snack. She's hungry. We're just her little girls. And he's like, okay, y'all get back there. God knows what women do. And he's like, whatever. And as they're back there, Hester and the girl switch clothes. Because I guess all black women look the same, right? Like that's kind of their theory. They're just like, they can't tell us apart. They don't care enough. And so they switch clothes, and the other group obviously leaves with the other girl to get her through the Underground Railroad to the next station while Hester kills time in jail. Obviously, later on, the sheriff shows up and goes, Hester, did you free that girl? And she's like, I did, Sheriff Lawson, I did. And he's like, ooh, girl, Shue is going to be mad. Shue is going to be mad. I forget why, but I think Hester has to stay in jail for like 24 hours or something before the sheriff can like legally let her out. I forgot the rules. Anyway, she has to stay in the jail overnight. But the sheriff is like, hey, do you need anything? Like, he's a very nice sheriff. She could have got stuck with someone like Shue. But anyways, he's very nice, and he's like, look, my son's got a recital at the church. I really need to go. Can I leave you? And she says, make sure you lock me in so no one can get in here and give me that gun. And he's like, okay. And so he gives her a gun and some food, and he's just like, lock up for the night. I'm gone. And of course, Shue shows up. Ezra Shue shows up with his gross, disgusting henchmen. And obviously they say awful things to her regarding her race, regarding her gender. Luckily, Hester is not the woman to be played with these men. And she fucking shoots up above them with her gun and is just like, y'all better get the fuck out of here before I pop all y'all's little white dumbass heads off. All right? I'm about to burn you down. Fucking go. And Ezra, of course, does that whole, this is not the last you will see of me. Obviously, Galen heard his woman is in jail. He goes, gets her ass out of there. He's like, God damn it, Hester. Can't you stay out of trouble? And she's like, you literally met me in the Underground Railroad. Okay? Like, you and me, this is our thing. Do not ask me to stop what I'm doing. And he's like, good point. The next day, Hester has to go drop off something at like Foster's house or something. Anyways, her and Galen show up. And Janina's there. And Janina's in the middle of completely not having sex with her husband. She is absolutely being ramshackled by another man. And Hester and Galen are like, oh, little sweet Janine is not as sweet as she made out to be. Obviously, Janine gets up and it's just like, she immediately plays it straight. And it's just like, if y'all tell Foster, I'll tell Foster that you're his whore. And I'll spread dirty rumors about you. And Hester's like, whoa, I wasn't even going to say anything, you fucking bitch. I wasn't even going to bring this up. I was going to drop off these books and be on my way. And Janine's obviously panicking. She's just like, I'm going to tell the whole fucking town that you're Galen's whore. And it's like, whoa, calm down. Anyways, Galen told Janine plainly, I don't care if you cuckold Foster with every man in the state, but lay your whorish tongue on Hester and I will destroy you. They're obviously stressed. They've had a stressful 24 hours. They go make mud pies. They have another mud pie date. I love that that's a thing for them to kind of talk with each other and have fun and relieve steam. You can't fuck all the time. Some dates you have to actually talk to one another. And so I thought it was I think it's a cute thing that they do together. Anyways, they have chicken sandwiches and pound cake. And I thought that sounded really lovely. Hester, God bless her, she asks Galen, hey, that thing that Janine was doing with that man, is that sex? And Galen's like, oh my God, baby girl, yes. It's not her fault. It's just obviously she's a lady and girls just weren't told anything about their bodies. And so she's like, I don't know what sex is. Okay. So Hester is dropping off a friend at the railroad station and there's an altercation going on and Hester goes to see what's happening. And apparently we have this scene. A light-skinned young woman in question was tightly holding the hands of two little girls. The handsome man staring angrily was her master. It seemed the woman had approached Branton after getting off the train and asked him to help her to freedom, but when the master appeared a few moments later, fear and uncertainty were making her doubt the decision. Hester approached her and said, my name is Hester. I'm a friend of Branton. Are these your daughters? The woman smiled a bit and nodded her head. Hester smiled down at the little ones. What are their names? This is Bess and that's Naomi. They're beautiful. Hester asked the young mother, what's your name? Mary. Does this man own you, Mary? The woman nodded her head. Hester looked to the man. Do you own them, sir? Yes. Hester told Mary, by the laws of the state of Michigan, you became free the moment you arrived. If you want to be free, the choice is yours. The owner interrupted. She knows all about the law. She don't want to be free. Look at her. You can see by her clothing that I treat her well. Why would she want to be destitute and penniless and a fugitive? He came over and stood before Mary and implored her in an emotional-filled voice. Think of what you're throwing away. How are you going to feed the girls? Where are you going to go? I told you I'd free you in a few years. I'm going to keep my promise. No, you won't, Mary whispered. Their eyes held. He slowly placed a finger against her cheek and stroked it with the tenderness of a lover. Mary's lids closed and a tear slid down to meet the caress. His voice was soft. But I will. I will. Don't leave me, Mary. Please. You sold my sons, she told him, her voice choked with pain and grief. The children of my flesh. The children of your flesh. And you sold them like they were nothing more than pigs at a trough. Darling, I'm sorry. That was business. I explained that. Business? Will you sell the girls for business? She demanded through tears. Would you sell your daughters too? He wouldn't or couldn't answer. I will hate you for the rest of my life for what you've done. May the Lord have mercy upon your soul. She turned to Hester and said firmly, girls and I are ready, Miss Hester. And I just a little moment in the book that just makes you go, Hester goes to Galen after that. She recounts kind of what happened. Hey, y'all. She loses her virginity. she loses her virginity. She's had enough of two-hand talking and nipple play through ugly nightgowns. She wants to see what Janine was having. And of course, they're having like little bedroom talk. And he says, "You know you'll have to marry me now." No reply. Galen reached over and stroked her cheek. Hester's eyes closed from the sweetness flowing from his touch. "Say yes, petite." "I can't, Galen." "Why won't you marry me?" "Your family will not be pleased to have me as your wife." "My family doesn't matter." "It does to me. Galen, last night I experienced the most powerful emotions I've ever known. What you gave me last night was a gift for a husband. I want you to be my wife." "But for how long? Look at my hands. Are these the hands you want presiding over your household? Are these the hands you want presented to your friends and family?" "Yes." "I don't believe you." "Believe that I don't dally with virgins and then turn my back on them." "See, Galen, for you it's duty." "That isn't what I meant." "Let's not argue, please." "Agreed. Thank you for last night. It is you who is owed thanks. I should go home." "You will be marrying me, petite." "Did you hear me?" She slipped back into her blouse. "I heard you." "What if there's a child?" She stared confused. "What we did last night could result in a child." "Surely that one time." "Sometimes once is all it takes." "Are you certain?" He nodded. Hester was overwhelmed by this information, but she refused to dwell on it. She finished dressing. She doesn't even know, like, you can get pregnant. Oh, like, and Hester, and like, I understand she's doing that thing of like just giving a hard goddamn time. But this man is a gajillionaire, and he just nutted in you. I don't know if you need to be saying no. Like, girl, look at the forest for the trees, okay? Even if you are just a little fling, at least you'll kind of be set for life. Like, marry him. I don't want to. I feel like that's terrible advice to like young girls out there. But if you're gonna be having sex without condoms and having these men just nutting you, my God, don't sign a prenup. The next day she goes to that best friend B, that nurse friend of hers, and asks all about the birds and the bees. She's like, "Hey, can you tell me about sex and how babies are made, please?" Foster confronts Galen and Hester, okay? Comes after them because they scared Janine. Janine apparently told Foster that Hester and Galen were fucking in the schoolhouse or wherever it was, and it just terrified her and it scarred her. And as they are sitting at church, the Reverend decides his sermon is going to be about whores. Are you kidding me? Does this town have nothing better to do? Really? We're going to have the Reverend talk about whores at church? Galen finally can't stand it anymore. He stands up. "There are rumors that Hester Wyatt is my whore. You are wrong. It is my wife I wish her to be." Over the audible shock that greeted his declaration, he directed his blazing gaze at Foster, who had the sense to turn back around. "Hester Wyatt is my love, my heart." He turned to Hester. With his eyes firmly fixed on her own, he began to recite in a low, rich voice, "Thou hast ravished my heart, my sister, my spouse. Thou hast ravished my heart. Until the day break, until the shadows flee away, I will get me to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of frankincense." Hester could hear soft gasps behind her, but she could not move. "Thy lips, O my spouse, drop as the honeycomb. Honey and milk are under thy tongue. Thy navel is like a round goblet, which wants not liquor. The joints of your thighs are like jewels." Each and every word had been filled with heat and passion. Hester's eyes slid closed. Such words did not belong in church, even if Galen was quoting chapters 4 and 7 of the Song of Solomon. Hester's senses felt stroked, caressed. She wondered if the great African Queen Sheba had been as moved when Solomon spoke these words declaring his love. Hester stands up in that church that was just talking and calling her a fucking whore, and she marries the richest man in probably like all of Michigan. Such a satisfying scene. Such a satisfying scene. Oh, and I love it also. Like, he is this gajillionaire and he doesn't need it. He's like, I will marry you in this church in whatever ugly, nasty, frayed clothes you are wearing. We do not have to have a huge wedding. Like, we can get married right now. That is all that is important to me, is marrying you right now. I do not have to make a spectacle of it. Although he did lovingly quote again what Solomon said to the African queen in the Bible. They are now married. Oh, you love to see it. It happened so fast. Anyways, Hester moves in. She moves in with Galen. And there's so many clothes. It's kind of like a Clueless moment of like all of these boxes of clothes that he has just been buying her over the past months. But like, he can't give her because she kept saying, you're love bombing me. Stop it with a gift. So he just like stockpiled all of these amazing things. As they are talking as newlyweds, we learn why Galen's motif is a dragon. Okay. And he is called the dragon, and his moniker is the dragon because when he was born, he was very pointy. He was a very pointy child. He had like a big pointy nose and big pointy ears and I guess a pointy head. And his mom called him a little baby dragon. They have a Beauty and the Beast moment. It's their first dinner together as husband and wife. And he's like, I want you to get dressed. I want you to come down for dinner. We have to make this special. Okay. And it's so fucking cute. Okay. He knows that Hester doesn't necessarily like all the clothes and all of the fancy things. So he gives her the first gift, and it's oranges, because we all know like fruit was super hard to come by back then, and she was obviously poor, so she's never really gotten an orange ever. And he gives her a little gift, and it's an orange, and he's just like, I know you'd really appreciate it. He also gives her tickets to essentially the Beyonce of their time. It's called the Black Swan, and she's an amazing opera singer. But anyways, he essentially gives her like Beyonce tickets. And then, because remember, she smells like vanilla. And I forgot to mention this, but she smells like vanilla because she rubs vanilla extract on as perfume. It's the only thing she can afford. And so he gives her, along with the orange and the Beyonce tickets, he gives her a vial of pure Madagascar vanilla extract. And even in today's times, that's expensive. So I can only imagine back then. I'm like, ooh, it's expensive now. And as he puts it on her, it's very steamy because he has this like Madagascar vanilla, and he puts it on her neck, and he puts it behind her ears, and he puts it on her wrists, and then he tells her, lift your skirts. And she lifts them up to her knees, and he says, higher. And she lifts her all the way up to her garters, and he puts some of the vanilla on the top of her garters. And he's like, so that later I can try to smell all the places that I put this extract. And you're just like, oh, Galen, you know what you're doing. He's been around the block. He does present her with a wedding ring, and it is a beautiful, of course, indigo sapphire. We knew that was coming down, but we love it. We love it. I love it. Again, turning something that is traumatic and an awful part of her past into something beautiful. We learn why Galen became the Black Daniel. Like, why does this man who has more money than he knows what to do with, why is he risking his life, freeing slaves, spending 3 years in a prison? Most of the adults, and I'm going to say this in my normal voice because it's a lot. Most of the adults of my class were very adamant about the abolition of slavery, but like a good portion of the sons, I was more concerned with owning the most prized horseflesh, attending the balls, and pursuing beautiful women. Although my family had come to America as French slaves in the early 1700s, they'd been free for nearly 3/4 of a century by the time my mom gave birth to me. The block did not become a reality to me until I became more involved with stealing slaves. As the years passed and I aided more and more fugitives, I witnessed the true abominations of slavery, the despair and the filth of the pens, the anguish in the eyes of one fugitive mother who had to leave her child behind. It changed me. I went from being a jaded rake who slept on fine feather beds to a slave stealer who spent 8 months out of the year sleeping in cold barns and on the damp ground. He helped a friend once free. He helped kind of smuggle a friend of a friend, and I guess he got the bug. Like, he got bit by the abolitionist bug and just became one of the best of the best. Galen leaves to go do business. Hester gets on very well with the household. However, Maxie won't let her cook or clean, and Hester doesn't know what to do with herself. And she takes pride in having a job. She takes pride in working. And Maxie's like, get the fuck out of my kitchen. You have more money than you know what to do with. Why don't you become Batman? Why don't you go do what rich women do and like do charities and shit? I don't know. Get out of my kitchen. And so Hester's like, you're right. I'm going to spend Galen's money on the cause. I will be Batman. He'll do like the more fighting side of it, and I'm going to do the more philanthropy side of it. We learn that Ezra Shue, remember, has kidnapped a father and son illegally. He is so desperate to fucking haul somebody down south. As like, this is the evilness. Hester goes to her old home for something, and she finds the father and the son in her barn or something. She obviously hides them because Shue shows up, and she like throws them in the top of the barn, and he threatens Hester. He is determined. It's given very Frodo with Esmeralda in Hunchback of Notre Dame. I think he's attracted to her, but because he cannot have her, he will destroy her. It's very that energy. Like, I could totally see Ezra singing Hellfire. To being a black woman in history, like, not only are you at risk because of your skin, you are at risk because of your sex. Like, god damn it. He shows up, he threatens Hester. He is determined, and he says, I will bring you down south. You will be a slave. You will be a slave again. Like, he cannot stand the fact that she is a free slave. Nothing gets under his skin more than free slaves. She has to go to a funeral. One of her friends was shot in like a Underground Railroad situation. She goes to the funeral, and I thought this poem was very beautiful for the man that died. They buried Branton with his Bible and a copy of Francis E. Watkins' famous poem, Bury Me in a Free Land. Make me a grave wherever you will, in a lowly plain or lofty hill. Make it among earth's humble graves, but not in a land where men are slaves. I could not rest if around my grave I heard the steps of a trembling slave, his shadow above my silent tomb, and make it a place of fearful gloom. I ask no monument, proud and high, to arrest the gaze of the passers-by. All that my yearning spirit craves is, bury me not in the land of slaves. Ezra Shue keeps kidnapping freed slaves, which is, again, very illegal. He keeps kidnapping them. And I learned that a quilt on a clothesline means danger. Log that away. We may need that in the next few years. We may need some of these signals again. Quilt on the clothesline, danger. And it also reminds me, I know that quilt, like the patterns in the quilts, also meant things. I know that's a big Black history, and also women's suffragette movement is messages in quilts. So, something to look into if you're curious. Foster shows up, as if Hester is not like dealing with enough shit, okay? Foster shows up, and he's like, hey, I want to buy your old house and your old land. They fight, because she's like, no, you have been a dick to me since you showed up. No. And he's like, you're being a fucking bitch, Hester. Like, you're being real greedy. You don't need that house and you don't need that land. Let me and Janine have it. And I'm just like, can Foster go back to England? Like, wherever he's from, he needs to go back and take his fucking wife with him. Hester accidentally slept in. You know, she's now a woman of leisure. And Maxie's like, well, in New Orleans, this is considered early morning for women of class. And Hester says, we aren't in New Orleans, Maxie. This is God-fearing, early rising Michigan. And if you're from Michigan, know that. Get your asses up. Hester's fair begins. She decided to run a fair so that the profits could go towards the cause. And Kids could have fun, something for the community. Very nice way to use her now money. But as the fair is going on, Galen's bitch ass grandma dies. And they have to go to the funeral after the fair. And we learn that Galen's bitch ass grandma blackmailed like all of New Orleans. Everybody hated her. She had money because she blackmailed like women who what was one thing she did? She would blackmail the moms who had illegitimate babies because she had all of the nursemaids kind of in her cohorts. Like she would pay them for information of who was having illegitimate children. And then those women would have to pay her so that like that didn't get out. Like, whoa, what a bitch. But because she was such a bitch, they're having a burial ball. A burial ball. Now we learned why his grandma was a bitch, okay? It was bitterness. Her husband, Galen's grandpa, kept a dark-skinned mistress in the quarter. Veda was humiliated and appalled by her husband's choice. She used her influence to have the woman implicated in a slave insurrection and nearly succeeded in having the mistress sold into slavery. His grandfather was outraged. He used his own influence to save the woman from the block, then publicly denounced Veda. He vowed never to live with her again, and he never did. He escorted his mistress to balls, theater, races, and didn't give a cat's tail about what people thought. He was happy. Veda had much thinner skin. The whispers and scandal drove her here to Michigan, where her side of the family still owned land given to them by the French. Anyways, she's a bitch because she was cheated on by her husband. And like, that's not a reason to be a bitch. I'm just letting y'all know. Take of that what you will. And I like this ending to it, okay? The ride to the cemetery took nearly an hour. Even though Veda had spent her entire life disdaining the few drops of African blood in her veins, in death she had no say. Those few drops rendered her as black as any other member of the race, and because they did, she could not be buried in a white cemetery. Galen thought it only fitting that Veda spent eternity turning in her grave, unable to deny her true ancestry. As Racine quipped the other day, the more Veda turned, the more evenly she would roast. They prepare for the ball. He does the vanilla thing again. Turn around, and he puts them on her lower back and other spots, and he's just like, I can't wait to smell those later. That's something that you don't really see often, is like scent play, in the bedroom. Scent play. I don't know. The ball is very fun. The coach ride home, much more funner. As they go to Hester's home, like they're going home and they need to stop by Hester's house because she's got to get something, and her home has been destroyed. They've had this wonderful ball. They're fooling around in the coach. And she just can't have a day. She can't have a day. Her home has been destroyed. And when I say destroyed, I mean people have shit in this house and wrote the N-word in their excrement on the walls. Everything has been destroyed. It is awful. Her papers have been stolen. Again, back then, like we didn't have databases and stuff. And like you just had a physical paper that was like free. And if you didn't have that paper, very stressful, I can imagine. Galen is very nervous because if Shu does something with those papers, we heard before, it's nearly impossible for a fugitive slave to win in court. Even with his money and influence, he's like, fuck. If Shu takes those papers down south, we're fucked. We have to stop him. Frederick Douglass has once said, the only way to make the fugitive slave law a dead law is to make a half a dozen or more dead kidnappers. And Galen wholeheartedly agreed. And we learn who the snake in the grass is in this town. And it's sad because it's someone who didn't know that they were being a snake in the grass. B, remember the nurse friend? I'm a stupid old woman, Hester. The traitor we've been looking for is me. I'm the traitor. When I left Tennessee 30 years ago, I left 3 children behind, 2 boys and a girl. I wrote the master after I began my life here. I wanted to see if he would let me buy their freedom. He wrote me back and said not only would he not allow me to buy their freedom, he planned to sell them deep south to punish me for running. B's eyes filled with pain and loss. I wrote him back, begging him not to, but he didn't respond. I never heard from any of my children again until Lem showed up. He's my oldest boy. He was 6 when I ran. Smart as a whip he was. I was so happy to see him again, Hester. So glad I didn't realize he was a snake until it was too late. He kept telling me he didn't know what had happened to my other 2 children. Said they'd been sold separately after I ran. But he was lying. How do you know? He told me himself the day Ezra Shue came to visit. When did this happen? About 2 weeks before you came to us as the Black Daniel. Galen startled, surprised she had known of his alter ego all along. Yes, I know who you are. I've doctored a lot of folks in my time. Seen them beat up, seen them healed, and I never forget a face. Where are your other children? Raymond asked. Dead. Both dead. My daughter died in childbirth and my other son of a snake bite in Texas. Why did Shue visit you? He and my Lem are half brothers. Hester's heart stopped. Brothers? Yes, they have the same father, my master. Shue's mother was the wife of the overseer, and the master used her too. Good Lord, Hesper whispered. Shue and Lem are mercenary slaves catchers. They've ridden with some of the most brazen kidnappers in the country. And they go into some of the most famous kidnappers in the country, but I'll skip that paragraph. Hester shook her head sadly. Why would your son work for kidnappers? Because it's what he does. He said it was an easy way for him to earn a wage. Duping your own people? Yes, duping his own people. He isn't the first to have no loyalty to his race. Obviously, we learn that B, the nurse that helped, bring the Black Daniel in and like the one who taught Hester about the birds and the bees, she's technically the one that's been getting all these families snatched up because her only living child is the half brother to Shue, and they're working together to bring slaves back down south. It's a mess. It's a fucking mess. And as a mother, I can't imagine how she must feel. Wow. And again, this is so privileged of me to say, but this shit happened all the time. We take for granted the luxury we kind of live in right now and the family drama that we kind of rest in, when this was the level of family drama. This was the level of family drama. It makes my brother-in-law, who has a ton of illegitimate kids and is on drugs, seem like that's nothing. Okay? That's nothing compared to being the half brother to the master slave owner that killed your siblings and your mom, and oh my God, what? We learn the hush puppy origin because Shue and Lem are obviously back and forth stealing freed slaves and taking them back south. Galen does the hush puppy trick. So a hush puppy, we all know, is the little cornball things. So what those were is they would lace them with drugs and feed them to the hounds, and it would kill the hounds. A hush puppy. Say that at your next, cookout. We also learn through it's this chapter here it's a lot of Galen and his cohorts trying to track down Shue and Lem. And we learn that Lem was found in the Detroit River with the word traitor branded on his chest, and he drowned. He was tied up and thrown in the river with traitor on his chest. And that was his demise. I think it was a correct demise. Hey everyone. So the last 15 minutes of my audio recording did not work. So here is my take 2. I won't be on the screen, but that's okay because I think a lot of y'all are just audio listeners anyways. So where we last left off was what? B's son drowned in the Detroit River with traitor branded on him. Galen is serving vigilante justice. He is hushing puppies with hush puppies. Yes, I think that's where it left off. I hope so. Galen and Hester are obviously living their lives despite Shue trying to come for her. Obviously very guarded, but what can you do? One day, though, Foster and Janine drive up to their house, and Foster jumps out, and he says, Hester, Shue has arrested your husband. Janine just passed Sheriff Lawson on the road, and he begs that you come to town right now. Hester's insides went cold as ice. She was already running to the wagon, when Gerald shouted, "I'll go back to the folly and see what I can learn. I'll meet you in town." Hester could think of nothing but Galen. She prayed for him as she quickly followed Foster. So I think Galen is out and obviously, apparently, arrested as well. "Come on," Janine shouted. "Hurry!" Hester scampered into the bed and Foster grabbed up the reins and slapped them hard. They'd only gone a short distance when Janine pulled a pistol from her handbag. Hester said, "Good thinking, Janine. We may need a weapon." When Janine began to laugh, Hester asked, "What's so funny?" "The two of you," she replied, smiling. "If you could see how deadly serious you both look." Foster stared back in confusion but kept the horses on pace. Hester froze as cool-eyed Janine trained the weapon on her and called out, "Stop the wagon." Foster stared in surprise at the gun and drew the horses to a stop. "Janine, what are you doing?" "Find a rope and tie her hands, Foster." "Have you lost your mind?" "Damn it, get a rope." "I demand an explanation." "Find a rope or I'll shoot her right now." "Do as she says, Foster." "Tightly. I'd hate to have to shoot her in the back if she tries to run." "What is this about, Janine?" "Get behind the reins and drive on." "But Janine—" "Drive!" As they got underway, Hester said to Janine, "Galen isn't really in danger, is he? You lied to Foster. You haven't seen Sheriff Lawson." "No, I haven't, but I needed Foster to drive while I held the gun." And she directs Foster to take Hester, her, and obviously himself in the middle of the woods, essentially. And they're all like, what is about to happen? "Now we wait." "For what?" "An old friend of mine, Ezra Shue." Hester stiffened and glanced over into Foster's astonished eyes. "Why are you doing this?" "Money. Shue promised me enough to make my way west." "Money? You would let her be sold south for money?" "Yes." "But she's of your own race." "Huh." "The race. What has being in the race ever done for me? Being born black is a curse, a stone around my neck. But the more money I have, the less the stone will weigh." "Janine, my husband is very wealthy, man. If it's money you seek, he will beg of himself for my return." "If it were that simple, I'd consider it, but all the money in the world won't bring Lem back." "You're doing this for revenge? Lem was a traitor." "He was, but he was also my lover." Hester watched Foster's face pale and his shoulders slump. "So you never loved me?" "You were simply the Galahad I needed." "What were you doing in England?" "A very wealthy man took me there. I was his mistress. He was killed in a brawl and I was left penniless. When you came across me in the hold, I was on my way home because the money had run out." "You pretended to love me. Why?" "Because I knew you'd get me to Michigan. I picked you because you said you were from Whitaker. And I knew Lem was here because he'd written me after finding his mother." "The mother whose heart he broke." "Just as she broke his when she left him behind and never returned. He hated her, which is why he harbored no guilt in using her the way he did." "Where is your family?" "I have no other family. I was sold as a babe and never knew of my kin." They go on, obviously unfurling that Janine didn't tell Ezra Shue where the papers were necessarily, but she definitely has been working with Ezra Shue and Lem. During, however, the heated argument of holding Hester hostage, Janine does end up shooting Foster in the arm, not fatally, but I mean, back then, that's still a pretty nasty injury. And of course, Shue shows up. He then brought out some of the documents from his soiled coat. "These are your free papers, and this here is a warrant for your arrest. Remember when I said I had someone looking into your past? Well, he's a lawyer friend, and he was able to trace you back all the way to Charleston. He couldn't find the speculator who took you out of Carolina, but he did find everyone else that helped. You know what? They were all property thieving abolitionists. None claimed any involvement, of course, except one old woman. She remembered you as a gal her husband and daughter took on a train to Philadelphia. She used to be a friend of your kind, but she ain't anymore. See, her husband had the bad taste to fall in love with one of you and left his wife. She was real eager to help. You have no way to verify if that girl was me or not. There is, if you've got purple hands. Hester fought down the bile rising in her throat while Shoo cut the rope tying her hands. Take off her gloves. Hester didn't move. Take 'em off, or one of the boys will be happy to do it for you. Hester slowly peeled off her gloves. Well, well, look at that, boys. Ever seen hands like them? Guess she's gotta come with us, one said. Guess she does, Shoo echoed. My payment, Shoo? Ah, yeah, here you are. This is only $10. Where's the rest? There is no rest. You promised me there'd be enough to buy my way west. You gave me your word. I don't give my word to someone like you. What do you think I am? An abolitionist? Lim was my kin. That's the only reason you're getting anything. You promised! Damn you! As this tender reunion moment is happening, so remember, Foster's being shot, so he's kind of like bleeding out to the side, if you will. Janine is pissed because she's not getting paid. Imagine that. And Shoo has Hester, and he's about to take her down south, essentially. But this is a love story. And so, of course, Galen shows up on his big black stallion, as they do. And he is here to come to the rescue. And now how he rescues Hester, however, is very fun because he looks at the little henchman and he's like, how much is Shoo paying y'all? And they're like, I don't know, back then, like what? A nickel. And he's like, okay, I'll give you each a bag of gold if you fuck off and go away and never have anything to do with slave stealing ever again. And because at the end of the day, a lot of this was money driven, these men are like, okay. And Shoo is throwing a fit. And he's like, no, stand by your racist principles, boys. We're doing this because we're racist assholes, essentially. And they're just like, no, we're doing this because we want money. So you'd be surprised, money talks. So they scamper off with their money. This whole time, he's had like this gang of French boys that he's best friends with. And like one of them's the coach and one of them's like a butler and stuff. Anyways, they obviously can't stand these southern slave men. And so he hands them some guns and he's like, have fun, boys. I'm taking my wife home. And these Frenchmen are just like, ha ha ha, oui. Sure, that's exactly what happened. We cut to the last chapter and it is Christmas time. And guess what, guys? Guess what, y'all? Hester's pregnant. Oh, she's pregnant. We're so happy for her. Oh my God, that baby's going to be so cute and so spoiled. And they are getting ready for Christmas. We learn Shoo's demise. Obviously Foster is okay. He's patched up. No one cares about him. Janine's mad. Who cares about her? I don't really remember what happens to her. Nothing important. But what happens to Shoo is Raymond and his Frenchman packaged him up and sent him to a country where there are slaves, white slaves. I think they sent him to some Asian country where they still have slavery, like it's more of a poverty thing and not a color thing. Anyways, and so they pretty much sold Shoo into slavery in some Eastern country, which is very fitting. You love to see it. You hate to see slavery, but you do like to see bad people punished. Hester does not know her birthday, which is the reality for obviously a lot of Black people at that time. And even nowadays with a lot of adoptions and stuff, some people just don't know their birthdays. And so Galen says, let's make it Christmas. Let's make it Christmas so I can give you double the presents. This man loves to spoil her. Kind of reminds me of Mr. Krabs and Mrs. Puff, if you've seen that episode. That's a deep cut. But he's like, hey, I want you to open one of your presents early, milady. And Hester's like, oh my gosh, what is it? Like, it's probably a crib. It's probably some baby thing. And he brings in an older Black woman. And she's tearing up and says, your birthday is on Christmas Day. Guess who it is, y'all? It's her mama. It is Hester's mom. Galen, in his Batman, the Black Daniel ways, freed her mom. I don't know how you could ever top that Christmas gift. He found her by accident, actually. He was like eating in a restaurant somewhere and he like obviously her mom looks like her. And through some talking and, hey, do you have a daughter? And she's like, I did, but she was sold and I've never seen her. And he's like, huh, is her pinky chopped off? And she's like, yeah. Anyways. And so her mom's recounting the tale, saying that she woke up that morning a slave, went to work, and left free. Like, can you imagine the emotional day that is? As I always do, I will read to y'all the last few paragraphs of the end of this book. Please, Mother, say you'll stay with us and live with us. We've more than enough room. Galen said, I've already extended the same invitation. Did you agree, Mother? Hester, I just can't barge back into your life after all these years. Suppose we don't like each other. Raymond pointed out helpfully. I don't like Galliano, but he's allowed to live here. Hester dropped her head and shook it slowly. Maxie did the same. Galen was grinning. Hester said, my baby will need a grandmother. You must stay. Francis's eyes widened. What baby? Galen didn't tell you? We have a baby coming. No, he did not. Merry Christmas. He's a devil, that one. Yes, he is, but as Raymond said, we allow him to live here anyway. Francis turned to Maxie and asked, you would be okay with me coming to live here? Maxie smiled. I have already raised one generation of Vachons. I am getting old. If the young one is anything like his sire, I will welcome all the help I can get. Everyone laughed. So it was agreed. Francis would stay. Hester lay in bed that night, the happiest woman in the world. She had a husband who loved her. Her mother had been found, and her baby inside her continued to grow and thrive. What else could a woman like herself want from life? The end of slavery would make the picture complete, but until it occurred, she would be thankful for life's smaller joys. She looked over at her husband sleeping at her side. Through him, all blessings flowed. Who else would be so extravagant as to give someone their mother for Christmas? Only Galen Vachon, the Black Daniel, the dragon, her love. She leaned over and kissed him softly. Something the matter? He asked sleepily. No, she whispered. I just love you. Go back to sleep. He gently pulled her in against his body and promptly did just that. Content, Hester cuddled closer, closed her eyes to sleep safely in her husband's loving arms. The end. So that is Indigo by Miss Beverly Jenkins. I really like this novel. Galen and Hester are definitely top tier couple. They're probably not my favorite couple, but they're definitely top 3. They might be number 2. I don't know. We'll have to rank one of these one day. Maybe on the Patreon we'll rank them. I do love them because, again, it is a little Beauty and the Beast, if you will. We see the trope of, again, maybe even like the Frog Princess, of like you have this woman who's just working so hard and she's a woman of color and all she knows is to work and earn her space in this white world. I think that's kind of what Hester, the trope that she's fallen under, is she's just constantly having to work. And then we see this Galen, and a lot like, I hate to say it, but it is kind of like Frog Princess. But a lot like Naveen, he's showing her, you have this man that's like, let's have fun. Let's enjoy luxury things, like enjoy life. You are beautiful. Wear beautiful dresses. Very treat yourself. A great literary couple in the sense that they don't follow those tropes too bad. Like Hester fights with them a lot throughout the novel of like, we can't be together. We can't be together. She isn't, I feel like in a lot of these novels, the women they're only strong if they remain strong and hardworking, and they don't like frivolous things. Yes, I have all this money, but I'm still gonna do my job and I'm still gonna wear linen clothes and all of this stuff. And Hester, I think she does in the novel. I mean, she's not wearing like full ball gowns every day, but she does allow herself to enjoy the new shoes and the nicer dresses. And in a human way, she does like stunting on them at church, okay? She does like rolling up at church in their own private pew. I forgot to mention that. He buys their own pew that him and her and their future family can sit on. Like, that is such a flex. But she does she revels in that. She's like, okay, they're gonna sit there and call me a whore at church. Well, I guess I'll just sit on my own pew in the front row and make eye contact with you while you do that, sir. So as strong and hardworking as she is, she's still a girl, and she's gonna be like, yeah, I'm gonna wear this negligee. And I like that Galen, he's such a golden retriever man, and that's my favorite type of man. I love a golden retriever boy. That's so my type. In two ways, I think you have women who want to tame the beast and women who want to make the beast. And women who want to tame the beast, those are the ones who like a lot of villains, you know, like Draco Malfoy and all that stuff. They want to be the woman that's going to bring the tenderness out of this monster. The one who's going to, again, tame the beast. Whereas women like me, we love a golden retriever boy because they're all a good time and they're having a great life, and let's go to lunch, let's go shopping. I'm so happy to see you. Again, golden retriever energy. But then when push comes to shove, they're going to get down to business, and that's where you make the beast. And I think Galen's like that. If he's a good time guy until Janine's going to sit there and run her damn mouth, and he's like, I will destroy you, little girl. I will destroy you in ways you couldn't fathom. Okay? I'm the Black Daniel. I'm the dragon. I am Galen Vachon, okay? Don't come for me, and don't come for my woman. Like, I love that. I love when the golden retriever starts to growl. You're just like, ooh, oh, he's mad. I do wish this was a mini-series. I wish all of these books were mini-series, honestly, but this one especially would be such a great mini-series. Like, They adapted Bridgerton, adapt some of these Beverly Jenkins novels, adapt some of these Penelope Naries, even a Janelle Taylor. I'll have the Yukon Territory with Landis Tandis in them, you know? Make these a mini-series. I think that would be so great. Or maybe one day this will pop off so well, Netflix will call me and they'll be like, hey, we're going to do like Drunk History where you recap these novels and we'll have actors act it out. Wouldn't that be great? Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. That is my idea. If Netflix is going to try to take it with somebody else as the host, I will be very mad. All right. Next month's book. I'm going to put the cover up here on the screen because, again, I'm having to do voiceover. Maybe y'all prefer this. Maybe y'all just want to hear me talk. Y'all don't want to see me. But next month's book is Dazzling Brightness by Roberta Gayes or Gellis. It's a double L. So I don't know if she would pronounce it Gaius or Gellis. But anyways, Roberta Gayes, Dazzling Brightness. And now this cover is fabulous because it is a step back. I will show y'all obviously next video when I fix my camera here. But it's called a step back in the sense that the cover is a cave and then you open the cave. And it's this beautiful portrait that hopefully I can put on the screen right here. And what this story is going to be about, y'all, is Hades and Persephone. Now, if y'all go watch my Greek retellings video, y'all can kind of get probably where I'm going to go with this novel. We have seen so many Greek retellings from a woman's point of view in modern times. But I'm very curious as to a Greek retelling from the 80s, 90s. You know, during that time, remember we had like Xena and Hercules and young Hercules. And there was a moment of Greek mythology renaissance. So I'm very curious as the tone and the theme in this novel. Here I will read y'all the back cover so we can get a little taste of it, okay? From the mists of a timeless legend, he was the lord of the underworld, cast down by the gods into a kingdom of everlasting darkness. She was born with mystical powers in a place of eternal light. And somewhere between the shadows and the sun was a world of treachery, danger, and unending desire. Against the savage splendor of ancient Greece, from the exalted mountaintops of Olympus to the glittering midnight realm, they would defy the gods themselves to make their heaven right here on earth with a love that would blaze forever in dazzling brightness. Ooh, I'm excited. I thought it would be really fun because we're in that transition of winter to spring in March, kind of, depending on where you are. So I thought it'd be real fun to check in on Hades and Persephone, one of the oldest love stories. Thank y'all so much for listening. Again, I have a virtual tip jar. If you want to give me a tip, I will hopefully come out with a Patreon. It's going to be Valentine's Day soon. Hopefully I can get this uploaded before Valentine's Day. I have a Valentine's Day history video essay. If you want to listen to that this Valentine's Day and this, knock yourself out. Thank y'all so much again, and I will see y'all all next month with hopefully some fun Patreon activities as well as dazzling brightness. All right, y'all. Bye.